The titan of the tarmac. Imagine an aircraft so vast that its shadow doesn't just fall upon the ground, it swallows it. An airplane whose wingspan is longer than the first flight of the Wright brothers. A machine that doesn't carry passengers, but instead carries other airplanes. This is not a scene from a science fiction film. This is the story of the aerodrome, the world's biggest airplane, and the secret, spanning transport network it was built to serve. A network that never fully came to be, yet whose ghost still haunts the corridors of aerospace engineering. Our story begins not on a sunny runway, but in a windowless, cavernous hangar in the Kazakh steppe, during the final, gasping years of the Soviet Union. A lone engineer, his breath misting in the frigid air, stands before the colossal, unfinished skeleton of the aerodrome. He isn't just looking at an airplane, he's looking at a dying dream, a radical solution to a problem so immense, it could only be conceived during the fever pitch of the Cold War. This is the story of ambition, espionage, and engineering madness. This is the story of how mankind tried to build a sky-borne railway, and the incredible machine that was meant to be its locomotive. Part 1. The genesis of a giant, the problem of the big cargo. To understand why the aerodrome was conceived, we must travel back to the 1970s. The Cold War was a chess game played on a global scale, and the Soviet Union had a critical, logistical weakness: its sheer size. While the United States had a network of global allies and forward bases, moving massive military equipment, like intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, and mobile launch platforms, across the vast, remote stretches of Siberia and Central Asia was a nightmare. Trains were slow and bound to tracks. Trucks were constrained by crumbling roads and brutal winters. The Soviet High Command issued a secret directive to its aerospace bureaus. The requirement was simple, yet absurdly complex: create an airlift system capable of transporting what they euphemistically called the big cargo. Entire strategic missiles, armored vehicles, and even components for their fledgling space program. From centralized manufacturing plants deep in Russia, to remote deployment sites, without any of it touching the ground in between. The man who answered this call was the brilliant, yet notoriously difficult, aerospace designer, Viktor Shavrov. A veteran of the Soviet aviation industry, Shavrov was known for his unorthodox ideas. While others proposed enlarging existing cargo planes, Shavrov went to the drawing board with a radical concept. He called it Project Groza, Project Thunderstorm. "Comrades," he reportedly said in a closed-door meeting, slamming his fist on a blueprint, "we are thinking too small. Bigger plane is not the answer. The answer is a flying warehouse. A plane that does not land to deliver its cargo. A plane that is a permanent part of the sky." His idea was a airborne freight network. Giant mothership aircraft, the aerodromes, would act as high-altitude mobile docking stations. Specialized feeder aircraft would collect cargo from factories, take off, and rendezvous with the aerodrome in mid-flight, transferring their loads internally before returning to base. The aerodrome would then fly across the continent, deploying its cargo via other feeder craft or massive parachute systems over the target zones. It was a crazy, continuous chain in the sky. Part 2. Birth of the Beast. The aerodrome takes shape. Approval for Project Groza was given in 1978, under a shroud of absolute secrecy. The construction site was a newly built, isolated facility near the Baikonur Cosmodrome, designated Complex 42. The aircraft itself was designated the AN-800, but those who worked on it called it the aerodrome. The numbers were staggering. Wingspans 142 meters 465 feet, wider than a football field. Length 98 meters 322 feet. Power plant 6 massive Ukrainian-built Progress D-80T turbofan engines, the same used on the Antonov An-124, but configured for even greater thrust. Cargo bay, a cavernous 2-deck hold measuring 65 meters long, 8 meters wide, and 7 meters tall. It was designed not for pallets, but for entire vehicles and missiles. But the most revolutionary feature was the sky dock. The entire tail section of the aerodrome, from just behind the wings, was a single, colossal hinge. It could swing open to the side, creating a gaping mouth 12 meters wide. This was the docking port. Inside, complex system of rails and robotic clamps would guide the incoming feeder craft into a secure berth. The feeder aircraft, known as the Mikoyan Gurevich MiG-101 shuttle, was itself a marvel. A compact, twin-engine cargo plane with a bizarre, asymmetrical cockpit design that allowed it to slide sideways into the aerodrome's belly. Test pilot Alexei Rudenko, who first flew the MiG-101, described the sensation. It was like trying to park a motorcycle inside a moving train. The turbulence from the aerodrome was a beast. You would approach this Leviathan. The noise was deafening, a roar that vibrated in your bones. Then, the mouth would open. It was like flying into a cave. A warm, lit cave that was hurtling through the stratosphere at 500 miles per hour. Your controls would shudder, and for 30 seconds, you were not a pilot. You were a leaf in a hurricane, trusting the automated clamps to grab you and pull you in. The moment you were secured, the silence was surreal. You could hear the hum of the mothership's systems had arrived. Part 3, The Network, A Secret in the Skies. By 1985, the first aerodrome, serial number 01, was undergoing ground tests. A second was under construction. The network, codenamed Zvezda Start, was being mapped out. It consisted of 3 primary orbital routes: the northern arc from manufacturing plants near Moscow, over the Ural Mountains, to silo fields in Siberia. The southern arc from the industrial heartland of Ukraine, across the Caspian Sea, to launch facilities in Kazakhstan. The polar route, a contingency path designed to supply Arctic radar stations and submarine bases. The system was designed for deniability and speed. A new mobile ICBM could be built in a factory in Gorky, loaded onto a MiG-101 shuttle, and be in the belly of an aerodrome within an hour. 12 hours later, same missile could be deployed via a low-altitude parachute drop over a frozen tundra in Krasnoyarsk, thousands of miles away, Western satellite ever seeing it being transported by road or rail. It was the ultimate strategic sleight of hand. The atmosphere at Complex 42 was a mix of fervent patriotism and intense pressure. Thousands of engineers and workers lived in a closed city, cut off from the world. They were building the future. But that future was about to crumble. Part 40, The Turning Point, The Storm of 91 and the Silent Giant. In 1991, Aerodrome 01 was preparing for its first full-scale, in-flight docking test. The Soviet Union, however, was dying. Funding was drying up. Political instability was rampant. The test was a desperate attempt to prove the project's worth, and secure its survival. The date was set for August 18, 1991. The aerodrome, commanded by the esteemed Colonel Yuri Malyshev, took off from a specially lengthened runway at Complex 42. A MiG-101 shuttle, piloted by the veteran Alexei Rudenko, took off an hour later, carrying a concrete block simulating the weight of a missile. The 2 aircraft rendezvoused over the Aral Sea. Radio transcripts from the mission, later declassified, capture the tension. Aerodrome actual to Shuttle 1, we have visual contact. You are cleared for final approach. Shuttle 1 copies. Beginning approach sequence. Turbulence is significant. Why see you wobbling Shuttle 1? Hold your line. Automated clamps are armed. For several minutes, Rudenko fought the controls, inching the shuttle towards the gaping rear of the mothership. I am at the threshold. I am crossing the threshold now. Engagement in 3, 2. A loud clunk is heard on Shuttle 1's recording. Contact. We have positive capture. Shuttle 1 is secure. A cheer erupted in both cockpits, and in the control room at Complex 42. They had done it. The aerodrome was a functioning skyport. But at that exact moment of triumph, a different kind of storm was breaking. While Malyshev and Rudenko were making history, in Moscow, a hardline communist coup was attempting to overthrow Mikhail Gorbachev. The country was plunging into chaos. The order crackled over the radio. It was not from Complex 42, but from a confused and panicked regional military command. Aerodrome actual, Shuttle 1. I repeat, abort mission. Return to base immediately. A national emergency has been declared. All military assets are to stand down. Colonel Malyshev's response was calm, laced with disbelief. Control. Confirm abort. We have just achieved successful dock. We are proceeding with the transit phase. Negative aerodrome, the political situation is unstable. Your project is hereby suspended. Return and await orders. The two aircraft, still locked together, flew back to Complex 42 in silence. They landed, the docking clamp was disengaged, and the aerodrome was towed back into its hangar. Its giant mouth was sealed shut. It would never open again. Within weeks, the Soviet Union collapsed. Funding vanished. Project Groza was dead. Part 50, The Mystery of the Second Airframe and the Scattered Parts. The story doesn't end with the mothballing of the aerodrome Savarolo 1. This is where the tale enters the realm of mystery and intrigue. The aerodrome Zarely 1 remains in its hangar in Kazakhstan to this day, a decaying monument to a dead empire. It is under guard, mostly forgotten, its systems cannibalized or corroding. But what of the second aerodrome, serial number 02? It was reportedly 60% complete when the project was cancelled. And it vanished. There are no official records of its dismantling. No photographs of it being scrapped. Most persistent theory among aviation historians is that the airframe was secretly disassembled and shipped away in the dead of night in the mid-1990s. But, to where? And for what purpose? Some rumors suggest it was acquired by a shadowy consortium of Western aerospace companies, eager to study its radical design. Others whisper that it was bought by a private logistics firm, and its parts are stored in warehouses across the Middle East, awaiting a buyer who needs to move very large, very secretive objects. The most compelling theory involves a certain American tech billionaire, and his interest in transporting large rocket components for his private space company. Could pieces of the aerodrome's revolutionary design, particularly its sky dock mechanism, have influenced modern concepts for air launch systems? Then there are the feeder craft, the 12 MiG-101 shuttles built. Only 3 are accounted for in museums. The others were supposedly scrapped. But in 2008, a satellite image analyst spotted an aircraft matching the MiG-101's unique profile on a remote, private airstrip in the Congo. The image was blurry, and it was never verified. It fueled speculation that parts of the Zvezda network were not just dismantled, but repurposed for a different, clandestine global transport system, carrying everything from rare minerals to sanctioned goods, using the ghost of a Soviet blueprint. Conclusion: the legacy of the Leviathan. The aerodrome never flew its intended missions. Its crazy transport network never whisked missiles across Siberia. It died in its hangar, a king that never ruled. Yet, its legacy is profound. It pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible in aviation. Its design concepts, the airborne docking, the massive swing tail, the idea of a persistent aerial logistics chain, have become a source of inspiration and study. It stands as a breathtaking example of human ambition, a product of a specific, paranoid, ambitious time when nations were willing to build sky cathedrals to gain an edge. Today, as we see the development of new, giant cargo planes and concepts for air-to-air space launch systems, in a way, walking in the footsteps of Viktor Shavrov and his team. The aerodrome was a failure, but it was a magnificent, glorious failure. It reminds us that the path of progress is often littered with giants that never got to walk, with dreams that were too big for their time. It sits there still, in the Kazakh steppe, a silent, sleeping titan. A ghost of a network that never was, waiting in the darkness, its story a whispered legend of the world's biggest airplane, and the crazy, beautiful dream it carried.